always the toughest gig post-lunch. So we've got a lot on our plates already to talk about social investment, but we're also going to keep you engaged. It was really interesting just going back to the session that... Going back to the session that Anna held, where if you looked at the graph, one of the biggest things that's coming out through the poll was access to finance and the difficulties, challenges, and struggles that diverse-led organizations or diverse business leaders have in accessing finance. So what better way to talk about it than talking about it in the kind of the context of 3 real-life examples with the really great panel that we have here. So I just wanted to start by introducing the panel. If you could just give a background of who you are, name of your organisation, what you do, that'd be fantastic. And I'll start with you, Lizzie.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Lizzie Jordan, and I'm the CEO and founder of Think to Speak. We're a KIC, limited by guarantee, based up in Lincolnshire, in a very rural, small, marginalised town. We started 7 years ago, originally to support children with their mental health and their sexual health, so teaching RSE, relationships and sex education in schools primarily. And over the last few years, what we've specialised in is we now support queer kids, so kids who are questioning their identity in some way. They may be trans, or they may be part of a marginalised sexuality. So we specifically support LGBTQ kids to ensure that they can thrive through their lives.
Thanks very much. And moving on to my right, Hannah.
Hi, I'm Hannah Oyewole. I'm the founder and CEO of Young Ladies Club, which is a registered charity organisation based in East London, Waltham Forest. And the main aim of the charity is to raise aspirations in disadvantaged young women and girls to help them achieve their career and education potential. We have a range of different programs: our mentoring program, employability and skills program, and personal development program. And currently we have our VARG program that's being funded by the Mayor's Office for Policing and Crime. And with that remit, we're actually helping to prevent and end violence against women and girls. Thank you.
And lastly, Grace.
Ooh, good panel here. I'm Grace McCorkle. I'm just looking behind. I hate photographs, so I know it has to be done, but minimise if you could. I'm the co-founder of Collaborative Women UK. I founded the organisation with my business partner, Jan Tasker. Unfortunately, she's not here at the moment. She's sunning in a Greek island. But we are 10 years old next year. We started off, we are a housing provider providing supported living accommodation for women who've experienced through homelessness, but the main cause, domestic abuse. The housing program comes with a life skills training product program, which helps women to progress from their point of entry with ourselves in terms of building their confidence, re-entry back into the workforce or access to the workforce if it's their first time, and also reconnecting where there are issues of separations with children and just regaining themselves back into the community they came from. We also started our community service, which operates a peer-led community education program for women and girls, where we have women from all ages and all backgrounds can access things. Over the years, we've developed great partnerships with some of our local commercial organisations. So we've had the opportunity, like say, do basic DIYs, building walls, plastering, to working with schools and young girls from age 12 upwards, giving them a background in terms of safe relationship programme.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
We were going to be joined by a fourth member on our panel, Fuad from Ashley Community Housing. As you can see, he's not there. He might show up at one point, but nevertheless, we'll carry on because we've got 3 great panelists here. So I guess, one other thing to mention is people online. Feel free to post your questions whenever. I've got the screen in front of me, and I'll be happy to read those out as and when they do come on. So I guess the intention of this session is to really bring to life your journeys into raising social investment and have a really honest discussion about how you found it. I guess the good, the bad, and the ugly. So in some senses, it'd be really good to just start off with how your organisation went about considering social investment in the first place, and how you found the investors. And Grace, I don't know if I can get you to answer that first.
I think our journey very much reflects some of the speakers earlier on this morning. We've had highs, we've had a lot of lows, a lot of disappointments. We've had struggle. Am I being heard okay? We've had struggle in terms of recognition, in terms of what a CIC is, because we are a KIC. We chose to do that because we didn't want to have part of the bureaucracy in terms of being a full charity. We wanted to have it, but also we do run from the point of view, the key principles of being a registered charity, but didn't want all the headache, unfortunately, that goes with that process. But for ourselves, in that 10 years, we've had points, and this is to the lady over there, we've had 5-6 years where we didn't have an income for ourselves. So the struggle was real. The housing project came first. We are both ex-local authority officers. Between us 40 plus years in our respective skill sets, but to create a business from the grassroots upwards became quite an arduous battle. And to the gentleman, young gentleman that was here earlier, we had days where we struggled in terms of thinking whether it was the right thing to do. Mortgages, children, grandchildren, all came into play. Also, we do a lot where there is the request for verifying your impact upon people that you are there to support, because no one told us to go and create Collaborative Women, but we knew what the needs were within our local area. But there was also an issue where we neglected ourselves and the battle became real. But it is with some great supporters and believers that we continue to march through the quagmire. One was in the room today, Key Fund, Matt Smith from Key Fund, and also Charity Bank. At some point then believed in what we were offering, saw the difference that we were making, and we, through trial and tribulation, I've managed to strike up a very good relationship that's helped us to get our vision not just from off the ground to the next level, and we're in the developmental stage of our business.
And out of curiosity, how did you, just very quickly, how did you find Key Fund and charity banks? Like, what channels did you go through, or like what networks did you did you find out that they were available and how?
We've been working with Key Fund now for quite a few years. We have in our portfolio, and part of our ethos was to try and add more value to ourselves by owning our own properties. So Key Fund started off with Chris quite a few years back now. I can't remember how Chris came across ourselves, but I think it was looking at how best they could invest in a local organisation. And over the last 2 years, since COVID, we've purchased property. Our model is a supported housing where the women share one space, but they have their individual bedrooms, but shared bathroom and kitchen. So in order for us to get to the next level, some of the things for us was to be able to increase our property, and with Key Fund help supporting us to do that, being able to purchase affordable mortgage, well, just about, but we make the figures work. And then with Charity Bank, they helped in terms of getting the deposit.
Great, thank you very much. And Lizzie, over to you. In terms of your journey for your organisation, in terms of how you went about figuring out whether social investment was the right thing for you, and kind of how you got in touch with your investors, how did that go?
So something that someone who was on the panel said earlier about their business starting off very much around themselves and their story. I can't see where you are. Yeah, it really resonated with me, because that's exactly how my organisation started. It was me that gets pimped out, basically. Me that rocks up and delivers workshops. It's me that does that. And we realised that really wasn't sustainable, and we needed to deliver in other ways. I had spotted some IP that I wanted to buy. Basically, a council had produced a suite of resource that was amazing, and I was like, this needs to get out wider. How can we help you do that? Long story short, it was riddled with a mess of how they hadn't done the paperwork properly in the first place. It wasn't actually purchasable. But it set the kind of tone of me with my board going, actually, this is what we need to be doing. So I had, again, Key Fund, had known Key Fund and Dave, good old Dave, if anyone knows him, their business development person, who's amazing. And back, I'm up in Lincolnshire. He was one of those people that if there was a third sector event or there was a social enterprise-based event, Dave would be there. And he was someone that you could pick up the phone and say, actually, I've got a question, or who should I talk to? And he's just one of those people who knows everybody and connects, your network is your network, exploit it and use it. And so it seemed logical that I really wanted, when we knew that actually finance might be a good thing to look at here, I wanted it to be with someone that I could knock on their door, I could meet them for a coffee, I could pick up the phone, and I knew that they were there. They're based in Sheffield, which is like an hour up the road, so that geographically that really helped. But it was absolutely key that we were a people business, and it was very much the people had to fit the people, and that worked. I have to then say the only reason I managed to get it past the board was because we got grant loan blend. And so that was the only reason that we then did it, because basically the loan and the interest that we knew we would end up paying, the grant was basically the same. And so that was the only way that in my board's head it made sense to do it. Is like, well, actually, we're not going to get that money without that money, but together they offset each other. And so that the challenge, I think, was me being in the right place and able to do it. So backfilling was absolutely key. And that wasn't resourced. We had amazing, so we got Ridge Fund money, and we got some really good, really helpful, useful money to pay consultants a lot of money a day to help us do modelling that checked my modelling, basically, and did a lot of work to say, yes, you're on the right line, but that didn't pay me for the hours and hours and hours that I'd sat doing it. And that didn't then pay for the work that I should have been out doing, actually delivering, earning money. So it was really tricky. But, we went from turnover of 50,000, and the year that we took on social investment, we went up to 150,000. In the next 12 months, we were going to hit 300,000, and we'd had our social investment in between those two, and of course the pandemic hit. So things now look very, very different.
Thanks for that. And I think you also make a really important case again for that capacity support, which was mentioned quite a lot in the previous sessions as well. So that's really interesting. And Hannah, over to you. You didn't get money from Key Fund. You went down a different route in terms of where you got your funding from. Would you be able to go into that detail?
Yeah, sure. I'm so inspired by the stories already. But my story was very different because I started the business after my first graduate job. So I was in my early 20s. And I think you have this blend where either you're so young and you haven't got much experience, or you're so young and everyone kind of wants to throw stuff at you because you're so inspirational. But I didn't let any of that get to me, because I understood that it is a business and you definitely need to generate an income, otherwise you're not in business anymore. So what I did was we ran loads of events, and we had a lot of trading income from our events, but we knew that we needed to go to the next level. And then that was when the startup loans came out. I don't know if anyone sort of remembers sort of startup loans, and that was kind of our first form of repayable finance. Slightly different from social investment, but it was still repayable. And I think it was a 6% interest rate with a 1-year holiday repayment. So I think what gave me the confidence to go for that loan was the fact that there was a 6-month mentorship attached to it. And I think that's very important in any form of social investment or investment that you're going to take on, is that you actually have the mentorship. Because I think within the first few weeks that they gave us the loan, some people decided to sort of put money into products only and then not invest in marketing or anything else, and then it kind of didn't work out. But I decided to sort of follow through the steps of the mentorship process before I sort of spent anything. So I think that helps us expand our events delivery and also our trading income in terms of consultations that we have with our corporate sponsors and corporate partners, and that's sort of how we grew the organisation from there. I think about 4 years later is when we had a major investment from the government, and that was, I had to pitch for that investment. It wasn't repayable. It was more like a contractual agreement. But everyone keeps talking about capacity building. I think the good thing about the investment that I had was that there was a 1 year worth of capacity building, mentoring attached to it again. So I think on my journey, where I've been very fortunate is I've always been surrounded by mentors with grant, with funds, or with contracts. And I think that what has been sort of the game changer, because I think when we did go for the mentoring fund, which was a £10 million fund split between 39 organisations, which myself was included, I think learning from a charity that had been in the space for 20 years was invaluable. And I could literally just piggyback off the information that they provided to us. So I think that has kind of been where our biggest sort of breakthrough has been. And then from that point, we've kind of gone for a different mix of income in terms of contracts again, grants and funding, and then trading through our mentoring program and the work we do with schools and our corporate partners as well.
That's great. And there's a question that's coming through the Slido, which I think is really relevant now, actually, just given what we've just spoken about, which is, why did you go for social investment rather than going to a high street bank for a traditional loan, an individual, or an angel investor? And I think just opening up to the three of you very quickly, like, did you ever consider any of those three avenues, or were those not realistic at the time?
Yeah, I did go for a bank, but because I think it was Barclays Bank, sorry to like air them out, but I don't think it didn't go very far. I don't know whether it was because we didn't have a charity structure or a CIC structure until I think 6 years into the business. It was a very long time. And so I think they didn't know where we fit. So I did try Barclays Bank. I tried different loans, but I think startup loan was probably the best for me at the time. So that's my story.
I have to say, we did, from the offset, we were very clear from the offset in terms of the structure we wanted, but both within the social investment space and within commercial banking, we found in the very early days there was a difficulty in understanding what a kick was, a lot of barriers. We weren't seen as a real business. So for us, we had to demonstrate our worth and our value, build ourselves up as a reputable business, irrespective of your governance level. We do have a board of advisors, so our full structure, we started that from day one. They act as a scrutiny panel for ourselves and add value, added input. But for us, there was barriers from day one in terms of just recognising what a kick was.
And anything from your side, Lizzie? Yeah, there is. I guess moving on. So we've spoken about how you kind of went on the journey to realise whether social investment was right for you, and kind of how you found your potential investors. Now digging into the actual experience of raising it, so the process of due diligence, the process of working with your investors to go through the various checkpoints they have around taking something to a committee for an investment proposal. I just wondered, in terms of the process itself, like, what was it like for you? And Lizzie, I don't know if you want to start off on.
I'm going to add to the person in Nottingham. I actually quite enjoyed the process because it was confirmation for me, and in kind of seeking validation that actually was on the right track, and that these other people were agreeing that, like, they were pulling and stretching everything and going, yeah, it stacks up. And so, yeah, I did quite enjoy the process, but it was incredibly labour intensive with no backfill. And so, you know, in keeping ourselves well, I think that that's completely underestimated, actually, the whole person impact of going through that process. And in our organisation, as you know, as much as we have a board, it was me doing all the doing and doing the doing that paid the money. So I think that cannot be underestimated, the toll of going through that. But it was the best thing we did, because actually, it really tested everything. It really made us plan and think. We just didn't put a pandemic in the planning.
And for yourselves, Hannah, how did you find the process, even though it was a startup lens?
Well, even with the startup loan, you still had to, provide a comprehensive business plan with the profit and loss, cash flow forecast. So it was the same process as anything else. It wasn't sort of like they just, give you money. You still had to do a lot of work, and we had to pitch as well at a live event our idea before they invested in us as well. I think with the capacity building process, working with the charity for 12 months, when I walked into that process, there was a lot more scrutiny. I think the accounts were scrutinized, and so I kind of felt like we were being stretched apart and then being built back together again. That's literally how it felt. But I think I always say it's better to sort of be a small fish in a big pond than a big fish in a small pond, because I think you grow and you learn more. And although I felt uncomfortable in so many ways, because I obviously wasn't at their level, I knew that this is an opportunity for me to grow and expand. So I'd say it was a rewarding process, but intense scrutiny as well at the start. Yeah.
And Grace, for you?
I totally agree with my colleagues here. But the one thing I would say, ultimately, you hit it on the head. You're still running a business. You have to have your foundations, the four corners, and believe in what you're doing, but they have to stack up, period. Again, the mentoring, the support from Matt, don't know wherever he is in the room, the support from Chris, from Keyfun was vital for ourselves in terms of personal growth, individually, both Jan and myself, getting us to the next level. Although within our previous hats that we wore, we dealt with budgets and big finance for a local authority. This is a different ball game. You're running your own business, so you have to be Jack, Jill, the trader, the cleaner, the everything. And that means if you start a business, you have to be prepared and willing to learn all the nooks and crannies of how your business operates, both strategically and from an operational point of view. So for us, having that mentorship, having that coaching, and I think I was talking to Trish earlier on from Unlimited, and she used the word, we call it partnership, but I liked what she said. It is a dating game. You're not always going to find the right person that's going to come to you and understand your business or the area of what you're delivering. So it's a battle in terms of explanation. They may be good with the finance and can hand out the money, but if it doesn't sit both from a value, ethos point of view, it's not going to work in the social space. And that partnership and the relationship you build up with the right member of staff, they are there ultimately to give you money. They got money in some shape or form, so they need to report to their seniors, but it's also about giving you the right money in the right way and making it work for you.
Thank you. I've got Mel giving me like slides. Are we done for time? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for keeping me time. We do have Q&A, and there's a few questions that have come up on the slide here, but I do want to open it up to the audience if they've got any questions.
I think someone has. You guys mentioned that you had this in place at the time of COVID, so it'd be really interesting to find out, did COVID affect any of your kinds of income streams, and how did your investors, how did they approach you at that time?
Yeah, I think we were very fortunate in the sense that our income stream grew rapidly during COVID. And I think it was because what happened was when the Black Lives Matter movement happened, a lot of organizations and foundations started ring-fencing funds specifically for Black and minoritized charity leaders and founders. I don't know if Bayo Adelaja's here from Do It Now, but I went through a 12-week program with her organization during COVID. I think they were giving out some funds alongside many others. So that was a game changer for Black and minoritized charity or leaders. So that was kind of our experience. But I think the surge and the demand in funds that were now available also meant that we had to quickly expand the team and position ourselves to be able to maximize the opportunities that were available. So I would say that was kind of the only thing that we had to kind of change, was how rapidly we grew the team and attended to that crisis or opportunity, however you want to see it.
And I can give a very different perspective. Prior to COVID, our traded income, our income was about 20% grant. The rest of it was all traded, and that's how I'd set it up. We didn't want to be reliant on grant income. That was the way to go, blah, 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 blah. So pandemic hit. Most of our traded income occurs in schools, contracts with schools, face-to-face delivery, in the classroom, talking to kids. So of course the pandemic hit and all the schools went, that's it. At the same time, the March kind of time when schools all closed, so all our income March to September was gone, but that was also the time when normally we'd be renewing all the contracts for September for the next year. And of course then we had the next lockdown, which then happened at exactly the same time, which then impacted on the next year. So we then hit about 70% grant income, a very small amount of traded income. So we had to be very open and honest and say, well, this is the money we've got sat here and we can keep paying you this for now. But then we got to the point where we went, actually, this maths is not mathsing. Grant income is doing the doing, but our traded income simply, we cannot afford to have this going out. We haven't got the liquidity here to give you this back. So with KFund, we had to be really open and honest and say, this is where we're at, this is what it looks like, this is what we're doing about it, but right now you're going to have to hold your horses. And in fairness to them, they went, okay, we're here. Tell us when you need us. And I've not asked the question yet. So we've had 6 months of radio silence till I poked the beast 2 weeks ago. And so, the conversation is open, but in fairness to them, they have, they've sat there and sat on their hands and waited. I'm completely diminishing then the mental load and weight of knowing that is strapped, literally, it feels around my neck. And every conversation, obviously, we have then with a grant funder or when we're scoping out projects and when I'm talking with my board, it's like, yeah, but there's this massive elephant that we cannot ignore. If I'd have had a magic globe, would I have done it 6 months, before a pandemic? Who knows? But it is what it is. But I have to say that in fairness to them, the door is open and the lines of communication have been open. And, Matt probably doesn't want me to say it, but they've not bashed our door down to get the cash out of our bank that we cannot afford to give away. Yeah. So 2 very different viewpoints.
And I have to say, ours is a mixture of the two, because we've got mixed blending as far as funding as well. COVID, they ramped it up because there was a major situation socially. The people who are normally disadvantaged, they took the plaster off. So therefore, in terms of the funding stream, it was trying to be as accessible as they can. But then going back to the conversation earlier, the capacity, we were running like mice on a wheel just to make sure, right, it's opportunity, but it also created a issue in terms of delivery on ourselves. But if you're looking now 2 years on, if that weight and volume of funding is there now, it's cut by, if not half, 3/4. And there are more people in terms of organisations in the space fighting for the same slice of the pie. And the funders now will tell you you're also part of a big queue to get access to that small slice of the pie. So we did well from our 500 to 15k within COVID. We continued to build a platform online, but there was a added injury to ourselves in terms of self-protection in doing so. So when you go back to some of the arduous impact reporting that you have to do, we didn't account for the level of impact it made upon ourselves in that. Sometimes we kind of neglect that. There's a 2-part question from the slide, which I think is really interesting. I think a lot of relevant learning for some of these organisations in the room today is, firstly, if you were to do anything differently throughout the process, what is the one thing you would do differently? And then the second element to that is, would you do it again and raise social investment again? Or has the process put you off in any way? Lizzie, if you want to start on that, is there anything you do differently, and would you go down this road again?
I honestly don't know what my answer is, because at the time I was so convinced by everything and everyone that we were 100% on the right thing and it was the right thing to do. Now, with hindsight, I probably would, if I could go back, I'd be like, don't do it. But yeah, I don't know. It's because none of us have that magic ball. None of us do. And I think the biggest challenge for us was because of the switch in the world and the way that our income switched. It meant our way of delivering was very different. So, we all got used to doing stuff online, but what we were really used to was there being a buffer between us and the end user. So a school or another organisation who would actually be paying for us to do that work, who would kind of triage and hold that kind of the dam almost. And actually what COVID did was it took the dam away. We're bloody good at what we do, and too many people came. And actually the only way that we were able in the short term to deal with that was because we had social investment in the bank. So, to the people and the impact and why we're here, we wouldn't have been able to do what we did if we hadn't had that money there. And that was my decision, sat with the board saying, we can't turn these people away. We are here for a reason, and our impact come first before the spreadsheet. So, I'm very, very grateful that we had that cash in the bank that meant we could continue with our impact and continue to provide that service free at the point of access in a time when the whole world, was crying out for help. So I'm incredibly grateful, and I would never change that. Now, being left with it, maybe not.
Anything else on that one, or?
I don't think I'd change much, because I think there was a lot of things that I tried to do prior to getting help and support or mentorship, and it didn't really work out. So I think everything kind of worked out at the right time. I think none of us could foresee COVID or foresee any kind of events that happen in the future, but I think the biggest takeaway is just learning how to adapt and how to survive during times of crisis. I think that's probably the learning point that I took away from that. So I don't think I'd change anything majorly. No.
I think we're literally coming up to our limit. We could have one very quick question, but it's got to be a super. It's got to be very rapid answers. So.
Hi, thanks so much for sharing the experiences. I have a question on, all of us probably, one of the biggest things we fear is burnout, because we're working all the time, and if you're not working, you're thinking all the time. And then you're adding the fundraising, which is just an additional big thing. Could you each say one specific thing you did to sort of mark the boundary between work and life and keep your recharge time?
Right, it's going to be super quick. What have we got?
There wasn't a barrier, full stop. You become a founder, a leader of an organisation, unless you've specifically been asked to do it, and that would be, I say, from a government body, and they can provide that resource. There's not that much time, especially in the last couple of years. I'm going to be rude and apologise. I only just wanted to say, regarding the space, there has to be a recognition that if you get it right with the right organisation to do the right funding package for yourself, there has to be some short, medium and long-term goals. And within that, then you build yourself a resilience. It's not a sprint, it is a marathon when you're managing a business for yourself. So I just wanted to add that to the last point.
One final question, go for it.
It's a short question. Would you have preferred to take an equity, and why didn't you?
Anna, Lizzie?
Our structure didn't fit, so it wasn't even something that we considered.
So yeah, it seems like the structure wouldn't work. Yeah, the investor wouldn't work for their structure. It seems.
Yeah, it's a non-for-profit.
I think Mel's about to kick us off. Are we?
Thank you. Hi. My question is around your board members. Basically, I want to know, when you was in the process of deciding whether you wanted board members or advisory board members, what were the sort of things that you considered?
So when we started, we had both. So we had our board members who were like actual kind of directors, and then we had an advisory panel. And actually, we then found that the advisory panel was not working because we weren't utilising them. So our original board, which has changed and shifted, and we brought skills on, was very much kind of like, okay, what kind of skills do we need, and what gaps have we got? And then it was like, well, how can we plug those gaps? And in the initial, very, very first time, it was who can I implicitly trust, and who is going to stand alongside me? And that was my kind of key decisions on who those people were and making those approaches. And then over time, it's been very much about, actually, we've got a skills gap here. Who do we know kind of in that might help? But yeah, your network is the people that you meet. You never know. You just don't know how someone can help you talk to someone else, and that's the most powerful thing.
Thank you very much. That was a really great panel discussion. And yeah, over to you, Mel.
I just wanted to share, I think I've learnt 3 things in that. I think I've learnt a lot more, but I'm going to pick out 3 because we haven't got time to go through it all again. I get asked the question, what makes a social investor social all the time? And I think, Lizzie, you did that. So what happens is, I can't tell you it's better money. I can't always tell you it's cheaper money. What I can do is tell you that when things get really tough, yeah, your business plan won't work out the way that you intended, then go and talk to your social investor. Because during the pandemic, there were lots of social enterprises. I know that Keith Under getting loads of call-outs because they're brilliant, but there's lots of other social investors who spoke to every single investee in their portfolio, gave capital repayment holidays, which basically meant they didn't have to repay anything, or went on interest only, or restructure the loan over a longer period of time. So what I would say is social investors are human, and they do care. They do care about your organisation. So when things don't go according to plan, and you're right, none of us knew there was a pandemic coming, talk to your investor. Shy kids get no sweets. I like that one. Okay, so chickens with sweets was also good. Right, so due diligence. Now, I was going to say it's obviously a Midlands thing going on, because that's 2 women in the Midlands who liked it. But I hear we have a Scottish lady over here as well. So that's 3 people I found that like due diligence. So we've increased our number 3-fold today. And I love it's a marathon, not a sprint. Yeah, that was a really great piece. And I really got lots of inspiration from how you all got money in the bank. And can we just have a big round of applause for this powerhouse of female-led business, women in business.